PTV, oberoende, piratistisk media, skapad och finansierad av tittarna.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a probably pretty short episode of PTV Global. It's the actually Maya's out running around, so we are going to start by watching a little video. That's the first thing that's going to happen today, but I just need to make sure everything is set up. I had to eat a little bit as well before this. So we are a little bit late, which is my fault. But hang on a second. I'm just going to start sharing my screen here. Dun, 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 dun. And let's check this out. There we go. Working. There we are. Beautiful. Like that. I was thinking we could wait for and watch a little bit of a video. We have a couple of. It's gonna be. Maybe I can tease a little bit what we're gonna talk about today. We are going to talk about. Oh my God. Oh, why did I close everything? There we go. We're going to talk a little bit about the nature, like usual. We're going to watch a short video on the pirates. It's kind of interesting and it's fun when there is any mention at all. But we're going to talk a little bit about and watch about the pirates down south. We may talk a little bit about the refugees and a little bit possibly about Afghanistan. We'll see. We'll see if we get to that. But it's going to be a pretty short episode. This is all that I actually had prepared, and I think we can watch this together and see. We will be the judge if this is some reasonable representation. But the title of the video is The Pirate Party. Could they win in the Czech Republic and across Europe? TLDR News actually made a short video about this, so it's interesting. I haven't watched this kind of. Let's see what they say.
If you like videos like this one, and the others we release on TLDR EU, about politics, parties...
This is wrong. The beginning is wrong!
...crises and controversies, then be sure to subscribe. If you too want to say in our video topics, then every video has a link to the topic suggestion form in the description. So whenever you come up with a topic you want explaining, send it our way. As I said, it's linked down below. So, in this video, we're going to have a look at pirate party politics. Yep, that's right, pirate parties. While this is already a good topic in its own right, this has become much more salient in recent weeks due to the success of one party in the Czech Republic. This is something we'll get onto later, but for now, let's discuss generally what pirate parties are and why they became a thing. The phrase pirate often refers to piracy, and not the kind that occurs on the high seas. Instead, the kind that happens on BitTorrent on the hard drives of digitally savvy teenagers. Pirate parties often campaign on issues surrounding copyright law, specifically instead the kind that happens on BitTorrent on the hard drives of digitally savvy teenagers. Pirate parties often campaign on issues surrounding copyright law, specifically the softening of such laws, freedom of information and net neutrality. For example, in the UK, the Pirate Party wants to reduce the length of copyright to only 10 years. They also want to increase how difficult it is to apply for a patent. For them, patents exist in order to reward inventors who have created something exceptional, not for business people to get rich from. However, they can also support other policies too, and exactly where they stand depends on the country they're in and the political context. For example, the Icelandic Pirate Party campaigned in 2015 to repeal Iceland's blasphemy laws in response to the Charlie Hebdo shooting in France the same year. Another good example is the Pirate Party of Sweden. Again, they stand for similar things as their British counterpart, such as reducing the length that copyright exists for. Additionally, they want to allow for the non-commercial sharing of content that is no longer monetised. In fact, it was policies like these that presumably led to huge increases of members when a raid took place on the hosting facility of the Pirate Bay, a website that allows users to share movies and TV shows for free, illegally. It was suggested that one of the legal advisors for such sites was actually on the board of the Swedish Pirate Party. But enough about other pirate parties, let's focus on just one for the rest of this video, the Czech Pirate Party. Established back in 2009, at first the Czech Pirate Party was a relatively single-issue pirate party focusing on copyright reform, modelling themselves on the Swedish Pirate Party. The Czech party in particular was spurred into action and the spotlight due to a crackdown of the Pirate Bay, similar to the Swedish Pirate Party. Since then the party has grown and grown substantially, branching out from just being a party focused on copyright reform to advocating for a digital revolution, a vigorous fight against corruption, an end to coal burning by 2033 and lower taxation. In their very own words, over time the demand for copyright reform has become the basis for a comprehensive agenda that we are now trying to promote in all political spheres. Above all, we want to defend freedom, control power and the powerful, simplify the functioning of the state using modern technologies, and protect citizens from bullying. What makes the Czech Pirate Party stand out in particular is their success. Unlike other pirate parties, the Czech party has been able to break through. In the 2017 general election, the party came third with 10.8%, just behind the Civil Democratic Party on 11.3% and still a way off ANO on 29.6%. At one point, however, their chairman, Ivar Bartos, was the second most trusted politician in the entire Czech Republic. Only Andrej Babiš, the Prime Minister, had a higher popularity ranking. And with bangers like this, it's easy to see why.
Beztrestně zašantročili, bezúplatně převedli, pak se ještě rozčílili, že je lidi podvedli. V ráji zdi se otvírají, ven vychází gorila, aby pravdu upravila a tu tvoji zabila. My nejsme saně, my nejsme saně, my nejsme saně, tak puste nás na ně.
More recently, towards the end of March, Politico's poll of polls...
Vänta här nu, skulle inte den där varit översatt någonstans? Det var tydligen inte så.
had put national support for the Pirates and Mayors, a centrist electoral coalition between the Czech Pirate Party and the Mayor and Independence Party, at 28%, 4 points ahead of the incumbent ANO 2011 party, led by the Prime Minister Andrej Babiš. This lead seemingly boosted the party's confidence, with them subsequently launching the process for a vote of no confidence in the government, a vote that did not succeed after the Communist Party, with its 15 votes, left the chamber, refusing to take part in what they termed this pointless spectacle, making reaching the 101 out of 200 threshold for the vote to succeed nigh impossible. In the end, the motion garnered just 89 votes, although it did ruffle some feathers, with Babiš directly attacking the Pirate Party as the ones pushing for the European Public Prosecutor's Office, or EPPO, to investigate the Prime Minister over his business empire, specifically over whether or not Babiš remains...
He is corrupt, right? So we've talked about this.
...in control of the Agrofert conglomerate of farming, chemical and food firms after nominally transferring ownership to a trust fund. If you want us to take a deeper look into the EPPO and just what it means for the EU to have its own prosecutor, let us know in the comments below. Anyways, in the succeeding months, the Pirate Party's lead has, well, begun to slip, actually reversing positions in recent days, with ANO holding firm at 24% and the Pirates and Mayors trailing at 23%. In any case, it seems that the established parties are concerned, with the Czech president suggesting that the party, not the coalition, that gets the most seats will be given the opportunity to form a government first, something that even at the Pirates and Mayors' height would mean that the ANO and Babiš would have the first chance to form a government. The concern comes not only from the position of polling, but...
Oh my god.
8%, 4 points ahead of the incumbent ANO 2011 party, led by the Prime Minister Andrej Babiš. Impossible. In the end, the motion garnered just 89 votes, although it did ruffle some feathers, with Babiš directly attacking the Pirate Party as the ones pushing for the European Public Prosecutor's Office, or EPPO, to investigate the Prime Minister over his business empire, specifically over whether or not Babiš remains in control of the Agrofert conglomerate of farming, chemical and food firms after nominally transferring ownership to a trust fund. If you want us to take a deeper look into the EPPO and just what it means for the EU to have its own prosecutor, let us know in the comments below. Anyways, in the succeeding months, the Pirate Party's lead has, well, begun to slip. Actually,
Men what the fuck is it?
we won't have to wait long to see either, which would have the first chance to form a government. The concern comes not only from the position of polling, but also ideology. The current president is seen as close to Russia, with the current billionaire prime minister, in the words of Politico, no model of liberalism either. This is in direct contrast to the Pirate Party, a party seen as, or at least wanting to be seen as, a modern left-of-centre political force promoting environmentalism, e-democracy and government transparency. We won't have to wait long to see just whether or not the Pirate Party's polling can stand the test of time, with a Czech legislative election currently set for the 8th and 9th of October. But what do you think? Is the Czech Republic about to see a political pirate-based invasion? Are pirate parties more broadly just gimmicks, or are they the basis for something politically valuable? As always, let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
I wonder what people have said in the comments. Pirate parties became more salient. Of course it's just a joke, but I think it's kind of funny how you characterize the Swedish pirate party as being upset that Czech copied them. Well, I mean, TLDR News, I'm not sure. I mean, they have their, I think they generally do it pretty well, but they're, I mean, like anywhere, they miss points. I think it's interesting that they're actually talking about it at all, because it's like some radio silence, and it's fun to see. It's always fun to see power getting scared, and to see how quick power tries to retain control, and how little democracy, you know. Let's change the rules if it doesn't favor us. And I think Czech is in desperate need of a better democracy, you know, and a party that actually stands up for that, and not the incredibly corrupt leader that they're currently having. And yes, the Pirate Party from EU are following up on that corruption, and that's really good. So I mean, there's some positive stuff there. I thought we should, by the way, maybe we'll get back to that and see. I don't know how late our Maya's gonna be, to be honest. We'll see if she taps something. She did right now. Okay. It will take 40 minutes. I honestly don't know if we have that much news, so we'll see what happens. What kind of anti-corruption policy were the pirates suggesting? I think it's about a lot. I don't know in particular. We could probably go through, but not now. But if you want to, you could find online what they're pushing. But I do like the fact that they are talking about it as a center-left kind of party, because in many ways I believe that that's where it is. And I'm not even sure I would say center. When it comes to doing these type of reforms, it is a fundamental change to the systems, and it's a lot about using new technology to actually solve a lot of the corruption issues, like by making sure that transparency is forced within the system. You are cleaning up corruption. You're removing corruption from the possibility in a lot of cases, and using technology that way is naturally a threat to power. I was gonna see. I wanted to talk. There's two things we could particularly remember today. One is Linux is celebrating 30 years old. I think this is the first kind of email in this you know, about like kind of starting the Linux thread. It's kind of fun. I'm doing a free operating system, just a hobby. Won't be big and professional like GNU. For 386 80 clones. This has been brewing since April and is starting to get ready. I'd like any feedback on things possibly. Like, dislike, and Minix, as my OS resembles it somewhat. Same physical layout of the file system due to practical reasons amongst things. It's kind of fun how incredibly it's Linux is so interesting on so many, how completely dominant it is in the fields where that in some ways matter, which is the fundamental infrastructure of internet, as well as how unknown it is, and to a certain extent still how very, you know, how strong this movement was. And again, like how you can see how that how what an incredible threat this always is and always will be to, you know, self-organization. There's a biography on Linux. It has a lot of the story leading up to around that email, and it's great. Okay, yeah, I haven't seen it. I've currently ported Bash 1.08 and GCC 1.40, and things seem to work. This implies that I'll get somewhere practical within a few months, and I'd like to know what features most people would want. Any suggestions are welcome, but I won't promise I'll implement them. Linux will probably never support anything other than AT hard disks, as this is all I have. I love the ending here. It's kind of nice to see, you know, like how things started out one day. I started out, but this is the news group Comp OS Minix. Anyway, it's kind of cute. Another little Europe-related news is that today is the day that Paris was liberated in 1944 by the Allies after 1,526 days of Nazi occupation. So, yep, good stuff. Good stuff. I also want to mention something else here as well. There's a couple of things. But I think, yeah, maybe we'll see. We'll see how long it drags out today. If Maya isn't here and it's taking a long time, I'm not sure. I really don't want to sit and. I can go through the news, but once I'm out of news, but I'll take the nature news by then, and we'll see if she is joined by then. Because there's really not a lot, to be honest. This is more just to make sure that we actually do it, and I feel like so many things we've talked about on other channels, man. I want to check this out. This is a little bit. I mean, as I just want to. This is essentially about the Belarus border, Belarus-Lithuania border. And it's quite interesting, you know, to see how right-wing governments, you know, this Belarus again is being defended for its kind of pro-Russian stance. Again, together with Hungary, that also has refused help now from Poland, humanitarian aid. But what they do to the refugees. So this here is a standoff at the Belarus-Lithuania border. Why are you standing? Go there to Lithuania, says one of the Belarusian border guards to migrants. Note that they all got anti-riot gear, helmets, shields, and batons to prevent migrants from returning. So this is what they're proposing, you know, like and this is the big migrant crisis in 2013, 2014, was partly because of this reason as well, where we need to come together and solve these issues in a reasonable way as a union, but instead they don't want to take any immigrants and force them out of their country, so they're moving them through the country and forcing them out on the other side. And what's going to happen? You know, are these people just constantly going to be shipped around like this? Like, this is when people are talking about this, how are you going to deal with this problem? Is this what you mean when you're saying they shouldn't be in our country, so we're gonna you should get banished for crimes? Like, is this finally what's gonna happen, or are you just gonna you're just gonna ship them back and forth? You're going to get you're gonna get a real problem. These people are not gonna have any other outlet but become pretty criminal, let's put it like that. So it's quite a lot of surreal scenes at the Belarus-Lithuania border. And Belarusian border guards, full right guards, are pushing migrants over the EU border. So they're pushing. Instead of dealing with this in any official ways, they are just forcing migrants through. They're moving them through their country and pushing them into the border. And again, this is pretty much what happened with Hungary during the crisis, and it's incredible to see. And I don't know, this is just like it's pretty pathetic how it becomes this sort of how quickly this becomes some sort of nationalist thing, like how fast we turn into not being able to collaborate over the like, if we really want a migrant crisis, if we really want troubles in our countries, we make sure that we don't deal with this issue, you know. And the only way we can deal with it in the EU is to deal with it together, actually. Anyway, won't be big and professional like she and you. Yeah, exactly. Pretty funny about the I mean, most of these stories kind of become funny, especially, you know, that they've grown so much, but there is something there is something that is so incredible wholesome about Linus and Linus Torvalds and the whole thing. And he's one of those few tech people that I still think is really interesting to listen to, if you know what I mean. Like he is interesting to listen to, where he keeps on being on the forefront of things and has such a solid foundation. I mean, I wouldn't say he's the most illuminating speaker, but I mean, to be honest, neither was Bill Gates, right? Or is Bill Gates, but he tends to have interesting takes on things still, you know, and that's quite incredible after being so long in the business. There was something actually about Afghanistan. I don't want to stick in this again. We're gonna have to take a debate on this at some other point because I'm getting tired, and we were supposed to have it earlier. Yeah, I'm not sure we're gonna take that. It's just, I think never mind that. It's just kind of horrible. I don't want any more horrible news. Maybe you guys have some good news, and it's actually old as well. We're gonna jump over to talking a little bit about the nature. We did talk a little bit about the fires in Russia, but there's been a lot. There's been a lot, and Russia isn't often in our news, but the Siberian forest is important. It is important for very many different reasons, but as of early spring, wildfires have been surging through the taiga forest of Siberia. The region hardest hit was the Republic of Sakha in northeastern Russia, also known as Yakutia. Linus is a bit erratic sometimes, like how he can lash out to people calling them names, can switch from they're actually well-meaning guys to they're idiots into, yeah, he's erratic, that's for sure. Also known as Yakutia, the area had 250 fires burning across 2,210 miles of land on July the 5th. By mid-July, residents of Yakutsk, the capital of Satya, I have no idea how to pronounce that, were breathing smoke from over 300 separate wildfires, as reported by Siberian Times. As of August 16, more than 40 million acres, 17 million hectares, have burned, breaking a previous record well before the fire season will end, set in 2010, according to Greenpeace Russia. One fire alone scorched areas wide as 2.5 million acres, reports Ann Simmons from the Wall Street Journal. The fires are burning so intensely that vast swaths of smoke blocked sunlight for the first time in recorded history. Smoke from the fires in Siberia have drifted 1,000 miles away to reach the North Pole, reports Oliver Carroll for The Independent. The Siberian wildfires are more substantial than this season's blaze in Greece, Turkey, and the United States and Canada combined. I want to read that sentence again. The Siberian wildfires are more substantial than this season's blazes in Greece, Turkey, the United States, and Canada combined. Local residents from Yakutsk have under the state of emergency for weeks as smoke continues to smother cities, even those that are thousands of miles away. In recent years, summer temperatures in Russia have been record highs in the triple digits, despite being one of the coldest places on Earth. Many experts suspect that it's a result of human-driven climate change. The increasing hot weather melted permafrost and as a result fueled the numerous fires, report driver Latvinova and Vladimir Isenchov from the Associated Press. Per the Moscow Times, a warming climate combined with a 150-year drought and high winds created the best conditions to turn the taiga forest into fire fuel. And this news, I mean, it probably puts into light the fact that even Vladimir Putin talked about the climate change, you know. Now, they're mentioning it. They're not, you know, trying to do anything about it. But, you know, you got to say that when figures such as Boris Johnson and these, at least, you know, go out and obviously state that this is a problem and that we're probably causing it, or at least, you know, saying that we need to do something about it, it signals some form of shift that has happened over this summer. Temperatures over the year range between -44 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit in Yakutsk. This past summer, after arid and extremely hot weather patterns, the Sakha-Yakutia region reached 102 degrees Fahrenheit, setting records for several consecutive days. The inferno's intensity has closed airports, roads, and prompted evacuations. And here you can see the smoke. A blanket of smoke from forest fires ascends over Russia on August the 6th. In Russia, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Ecology only keeps track of forest fires that threaten populated areas and omits any fires on grassland, plains, or farmland, per the Post. Authorities are not required to extinguish fires in regions far away from settlements, also called control zones, per the Moscow Times. Fires located far away from populations are allowed to burn if the damage is not considered worth costs of containing the fire. Maybe we can look a little bit. Siberian wildfires naturally occur as a part of an annual cycle, but climate officials see this year's blazes as a sign of more enormous fire risks in the future, especially with the amount of carbon released during these wildfires on an already warming planet, writes the Post. Last year, when wildfires rolled through Siberia, an estimated 450 million tons of carbon dioxide was released into the atmosphere. This year, the combined wildfires released more than 505 million tons of CO2. And I mean, obviously, this ain't particularly good, right? And these wildfires is a really, and particularly, I guess what they're saying here is due to the permafrost being much longer lived before, it was harder for these fires to even start during the relatively short period where it could kind of bite. You know, just the cold is actually preventing it. And a lot of our carbon is tied to the Siberian forest. I mean, the same in many ways obviously goes for the Amazon and different places, but more and more the Russian forests are seen as probably the true lung of the planet if we have it in one particular place. The ocean probably number one, but it's seen as a very important place. So Yeah, I mean it's bad at a particularly horrible level naturally, and I mean we just have to hope that it goes down. This is one of those kind of cycles that just isn't really playing in our favor, right? It's not really adding. 'Cause I mean, you obviously have different things that are correcting, right? But these are one of those things that are not. And I think, yeah, it's a pretty big oof, this one. It's gone under my radar. I mean, I haven't really read about it, but, you know, even like to the size of these fires are bigger than the 4 large fires we have been talking about combined, right? It's huge. And I mean, naturally, let's be honest, part of this is a part of a natural cycle. That's not what we're talking about. It's just that it's happening on a magnitude that is so much larger. And unfortunately, it takes a lot of time for that carbon dioxide to be tied again into trees, right? So yeah, this is like, I don't know. I just we're having the Doomer TV whenever we do global news. Oh shit, man. So horrible. I thought we should talk about this a little bit because it's worth to say, right? When people are talking about action on a political level, it sounds sometimes like when you are discussing this, that people will be like, well, no, the market, blah, 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 each individual responsibilities and something like that. But it's not something that we can really ever fight alone. We need to do it together. There's a lot of different things that needs to happen. There's also something that seems to be a little bit forgotten, and that is that we subsidize the oil industry incredibly much, right? I think in Sweden alone it's about 30 billion SEK every year. And this is pretty typical. So it's not like we're having a free energy market. That's not really how the energy market works in general. So this is national security. It's a lot of different things that comes to play. So it's not really something that you can control. Let's put it like that. It's not necessarily a market that could ever be free, that can be free, or where you can have enough companies, enough competition to be able to drive something. And it is a market that always will have to be regulated in certain ways. It's more about regulating in a way that makes it better for alternatives to come through. Not just all fossil fuels in general. Yes, that's correct. Sri. But this is a little bit of news. Central banks helping funnel trillions of dollars into fossil fuels despite climate pledges, research finds. A new report claims that central banks failed to prevent approximately 3.8 trillion worth of financial flows going to the fossil fuel industry between 2016 and 2020. Like, there's a lot. It's hard to understand those numbers. It really is. Let's say that between these time periods, so the war in Afghanistan is going to end on $6-point-something trillion when the loans are paid back, essentially, and all is said and done. So they could essentially, this is money to a magnitude that could be used to take over Afghanistan. And this is over a 4-year period, not a 20-year period, right? It's absolutely enormous amounts of money, and I think it's worth to think a little bit about that. Like when we were looking at Bezos' wealth, just to understand that wealth at a scale, It's such this is like another dimension above and beyond Bezos, right? Central banks are continuing to help channel trillions of dollars into fossil fuels through policy decisions and direct financing, with overall sums rising in recent years, a new report has found. None of the 12 banks examined are on track to meet the Paris Agreement targets, despite many of them recently pledging to net zero emissions by 2050, the US-based environmental organization Oil Change International, OCI, said. The report calls on governments to update the mandate to banks to support the managed decline of fossil fuels. The news comes ahead of a virtual conference of central bankers on Friday, where policy leaders and investors are expected to discuss the challenges posed by climate change. David Tong, Global Industry Campaign Manager at OCI and author of the report, said in a statement, central banks have access to powerful tools. And note, this is central banks, right? Have access to powerful tools to confront the climate crisis, but they aren't using them. Instead of using their power to cut off finance for fossil fuels, they are making themselves busy tinkering around the edges of the climate crisis. These are, in effect, the banks that should be controlled by our politicians, right? These are things where, so in essence, what they're saying is our politicians are not doing this. And it kind of goes to state that kind of unholy thing where we have semi-privatized central banks and politicians who seem more inclined to help the big money rather than anything else. He continued, the climate crisis is too dire, too urgent for such critical institutions to be dawdling when they could be leading the finance sector in a new climate-safe direction. The report looked at 12 central banks from the UK, US, European Union, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Italy, Japan, Russia, and Switzerland. It analyzed 3 key functions of central banks to make conclusions: asset management, rules, and support for commercial banks for financing fossil fuels, and policy and research that could guide decision-making in the future. Some central banks have taken steps to increase transparency and reporting of climate-related risks, but the report says this has been overshadowed by a failure to reduce financial flows into the fossil fuels industries at an estimated $3.8 trillion in the 4 years following the Paris Agreement. Financial flows are also increasing to projects linked to the exploration and development of new fossil fuel resources, indicating that central banks are not using their influence as regulators of commercial banks to stem the flow of capital to polluting activities. Danisha Kazi, senior economist at Positive Money, a UK-based advocacy group which collaborated on the report, said the Bank of England in particular should be doing more in light of recent commitments. With its new remit to support net zero and environmental sustainability, the Bank of England is particularly in good position to lead the way, but it has yet to turn its words into actions and actively transform the financial system to a more sustainable footing, she said. When asked if the bank believed it was doing enough to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, a Bank of England spokesperson pointed to small comments made in June by its governor, Andrew Bailey. At the time, Bailey said the bank was on course to meet our ambitious target of reducing emissions by 63% from 2016 to 2030, a level of reduction consistent with the goals of the Paris Agreement in the industry best practice. In addition, this year we have gone further and made a new commitment to achieve net zero emissions from our physical operations by 2050 at the latest. These do not include so-called financed emissions from banks lending, however, and this is probably the problem. I mean, fine if you do it, but I mean, it's so weird to see that. These do not include so-called financed emissions from banks lending. I mean, this is the whole point. Bailey also said the bank would continue to hold the firms who regulate to high standards by assessing the progress against our climate-related supervisory expectations and the resiliency of blah, 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 blah. The problem is, according to this and according to what I see, it's just not really happening. And it really goes into, I mean, it's again, you have politicians saying one thing and doing another thing. Because ultimately, and in most countries, the central banks, maybe minus US a little bit, are under governmental control, right? These are instruments to use. These are not some wholly free. I think the idea of that free market with the central banks, you know, should be able to like let them know. The central banks are there so we can exert a control over the market. The current way that our system works does not have the ability to factor in the cost of climate. It doesn't have the ability to look into the future. It looks for the next stock evaluation, you know, for the next report, for the next quarterly report. The way incentives are created on the market are short term. And that's not particularly strange, specifically not when you're printing money and just fueling this short-term economy. But most politicians seems to be extremely hands-off. And even if they say they're going to do something about it, when they are finally in power, they do nothing. They're very hands-off, and they will give you some neoliberal argument. Yeah, it's just kind of fucked up. Ah, man. Like we were talking a little bit about before, we were talking about the Freon challenge. And I mean, obviously, that was a little bit different because you had an alternative, right? Like kind of getting rid of that wasn't the end of the world. And particularly, maybe it didn't hurt the consumers that much. I mean, what would happen today if we just banned fossil fuels? Like, I mean, let's say we ban it. You know, what would happen? I mean, if we did a immediate ban, a lot of it would be, I mean, it would be chaos, right? But we do have alternatives ready. We do have possible alternatives, at least when it comes to just car driving, at least, and definitely house power. We don't have to power our electric grid with fossil fuels. But so much of our fundamental infrastructure is built on this. And this is why this is so incredibly damaging. If we want to incentivize the market to work towards technologies that exist, if we really want to do that, if we want to make sure that it gets cheaper, we need to use every available tool to do so. Otherwise, we are going to come sooner or later. I mean, we're just going. It's going to become this fucking what we looked at, you know, shipping climate immigrants back and forth over nationalistic borders. You know, it's a huge issue, and it can't wait. And it's possible to do these changes, and that's what's the most frustrating for me to read this. Yeah. Is it true Bezos landed back to Earth and still rules Amazon? It's true, unfortunately. They still take 50% of everything that we get on this platform. It's so sad. I honestly have no clue what we should do now. You want to watch some random movie? That's all I had prepared. I didn't expect to sit there alone for so long. So sad. Maybe we can watch some more TLDR. Maybe we could check this. The Federal Europe, the party trying to unite Europe further. What about that?
This video was suggested by TLDR viewers in the topic suggestion form. The link to the form is in the description of every video. It stands for: Volt parties tend to support policies that can be enacted across national borders, with them claiming that national parties are reaching their limits. As the world is getting more globalized, they argue that the solutions need to transcend national borders, and nowhere is this more clear than when it comes to policies surrounding climate change. Firstly, they want to introduce an EU-wide carbon tax, designed to stop people from using carbon-intensive products. Linked to this, they also want to stop subsidies on fossil fuels and increase the energy-saving targets from 30 to 40%.
I mean, this is the right way to talk. Stop subsidizing fossil industries. I mean, even if you're a goddamn libertarian, you shouldn't want that to happen.
And this strategy of every country doing their bit and working together towards a common aim can be seen throughout their manifesto. For example, on migration. They want to reform the way that the EU deals with asylum seekers and migrants coming from outside the EU. This would be aimed at ensuring that more countries took on more asylum seekers, as they claim that a small handful have been taking the vast majority. Alongside this, they also want to increase and improve legal pathways into Europe. And all of these policies are designed to work only at a European level. So it's clear by reading their manifesto that they're aiming to make a federal Europe, one that has a more powerful central government, capable of compelling constituent nations to abide by the rules they traditionally set themselves. Nowhere is this more clear than their commitment to create the position of a European Prime Minister, a figure that will be accountable to the European Parliament. However, there are other policies that we would expect from more traditional parties, who aim to just be elected in a single country. And these policies show them as a very socially liberal party. For example, they want to legalise sex work, they want to legalise euthanasia, and they want to look into the alternatives for prisons, as well as prioritising other sanctions. They also advocate for a digital revolution, with policies committed to making more paperless administration systems, expanding the Estonian model of e-government, and expanding e-healthcare systems. So that's a quick overview of what Volt stand for. And before anyone leaves a comment about how we've missed a fundamental policy of Volt, please consider that this is a 10-minute video, and their manifesto is 217 pages long. Now let's move on to whether they've had any successes yet. Well, Volt is actually only 4 years old, having been founded on the 29th of March 2017, which just happens to be the day that the UK formally triggered Article 50 and started the Brexit process. Nonetheless, they've already had some electoral successes. For example, they've won 3 seats in the 2021 Dutch general election. According to one report, Volt was successful due to last-minute politicisation of European integration. And interestingly, polls show that Volt did best with highly educated Dutch voters, specifically within the 18 to 34-year-old bracket. Volt has also elected 1 member in the European Parliament, and this came in the 2019 European parliamentary elections in Germany. Volt's elected member, Damien Bosselage, was at the top of Volt's list, and as they passed the threshold, he became their representative in Brussels. In fact, although there are no other voters in the national German government, there are a number in various councils across the country. So, despite being so new, they have had some electoral success. But a question that's likely burning in your mind is, could Volt, or some other pan-European party, actually end up forming a government across national borders? In essence, are we about to see a Spanish and Portuguese MP become one and the same person? Well, to put it bluntly, no. And that's because, legally speaking, Volt in Spain is a completely different legal entity to Volt in Italy, which in turn is a different entity from Volt in the UK. So while they sit under the same umbrella and brand name, there are clearly some differences. It's also worth distinguishing the difference between the likes of Volt as a pan-European political party and political parties at the European level, known more informally as Europarties. Europarties are the respective groupings of domestic political parties in the EU, and broadly have 3 levels: national constituent member parties, a transnational party organisation, and then a political grouping within the European Parliament. Take, for example, the European People's Party. The EPP is currently the EU's largest political grouping, holding 178 seats in the European Parliament. Yet, when EU citizens went to the polls back in 2019, they didn't vote directly for the EPP, nor EPP candidates. Despite having its own leader, policies and manifesto, they were not directly elected. Instead, people voted for domestic political parties and politicians whose MEPs sit in the European Parliament under the EPP banner. To illustrate this point, let's take a look at one of the best-known MEPs, Nigel Farage. In 2014, Farage retained his seat in the European Parliament, but when voters in the southeast of England seat voted him in, they did so as a UKIP member. However, when Farage sat in the European Parliament, he sat as an EFDD member, as the UKIP party were a member of the Europe of Freedom and Direct Democracy Euro Party, all while retaining his UKIP domestic credentials and while being able to defect from the EFDD. In essence, these Euro parties are governing alliances. Different parties sit under the same umbrella and the same name, yet each retain their individual autonomy and colours. So, having explained that, let's turn back to actual pan-European political parties, because these pan-European parties are radically different in that they are far, far more than just a grouping of pre-existing political parties. In a very simplistic view of things, while Euro parties are bottom-up affairs, these pan-European political parties are top-down. The umbrella comes first and then leads to the creation of individual sub-parties for each member state. Therefore, pan-European parties are far more centralised at the European level, looking at issues through less of a country-specific lens and more of a transnational European one. Looking directly at Volt's policies on climate change, we can see this in action, with, as we mentioned, them pursuing an EU-wide carbon tax to be used alongside EU-wide projects and initiatives. And speaking more broadly, there certainly are a number of issues that transcend national borders, most notably for Europe being that of migration. As we've covered in a number of videos on this channel, Europe continues to face a migration crisis, with thousands making or attempting to make the treacherous journey to European soil. On paper, the EU has a policy to handle it, targeting and shutting down the routes and relocating refugees throughout European member states. The issue being that this plan hasn't turned out as expected, with many southern European countries such as Italy, Greece and Spain all facing a disproportionate burden when it comes to handling the influx. In turn, the argument goes that the only way of truly dealing with this issue is on the European level, not just through political wranglings between French and German MEPs, but by a more European-wide, European-led group, or at least that's how the theory goes. In any case, Volt isn't alone on the pan-European stage. Democracy in Europe Movement 2025, a pan-European party set up by the Greek finance minister during the height of the sovereign debt crisis, similarly campaigns on a Europe-wide level, pushing for a European New Deal, advancements in tech sovereignty, and a separate Green New Deal for Europe. If you'd like us to make a separate video on DIEM25, then let us know in the comments below. Anyway, both DIEM25 and Volt are of the opinion that certain issues facing Europe...
Well, I just heard about Volt a little bit. It was pretty similar to some other pirate party agenda, to be honest. Quite interesting. Well, to be honest, I think I'm gonna go sleep. I'm tired. I want to sleep. I want to sleep like a baby and be ready to go tomorrow. Tomorrow we are doing, it's just it's a normal Thursday. It's nothing special. We're not starting with the Syndicalisterna until next week. As far as I am aware, at least. I'm going to call them tomorrow and talk. But until then, people, sleep tight and I'll talk to you then. Bye-bye. Oh, by the way, we'll see if we can raid Myra again.
PTV, oberoende, piratistisk media, skapad och finansierad av tittarna.